My name's Stella, I'm a believer, and this is what I'm bringing to the table. God works miracles through the Apostle Peter. Peter went through all parts of the country to do ministry, travelling the 35 miles from Jerusalem to Lydia. Lydia is near modern-day Lod, the site of Ben Gurion Airport outside of Tel Aviv. Peter found a needy man God wanted to miraculously heal, and Peter found him as he was ministering to others. In the name of Jesus. Ananias, Jesus, the Christ, heals you. Peter clearly identified who healed Jesus, the Christ. Peter was only his instrument. The words of Peter, "Arise and make your bed," were perhaps consciously an imitation of Jesus' healing of the paralytic man in Mark 2:10-12. So all who dwelt in Lydia and Sharon saw him and turned to the Lord. The miraculous healing of Ananias made many people turn to the Lord, presumably with Peter preaching the gospel to them. Dorcas from Joppa dies, named Tabitha, which is translated Dorcas. Both names mean dear. This woman was a beloved member of the Christian community in Joppa because she was full of good works and charitable deeds. Peter wasn't in Joppa when Dorcas died, yet he wasn't far away. And the Christians in Joppa had heard that God was doing miraculous things through Peter in nearby Lydia. They begged Peter to come, perhaps asking him when Dorcas was still alive or had just died. Dorcas is raised from the dead. All the widows stood by him weeping. It may very well be that the expectation was that Peter would merely comfort these Christian widows and others in their grief over Dorcas's death. Yet Peter sensed the specific leading to do just as he had seen Jesus do, as recorded in Mark 5:38-43. He put them all out in the anticipation that God would do for Tabitha what he did for the daughter of the ruler of the synagogue. Tabitha, arise. Peter seemed to clearly remember what Jesus did in Mark 5:38-43 or Luke 8:50-56. In that healing, Jesus said, Talitha Kumi. Peter said here, Tabitha Kumi. Peter could hear Jesus' words in his head as he ministered. Peter simply tried to do as Jesus did. Jesus was his leader. He wasn't trying to lead Jesus anymore, as he did when he told Jesus not to go the way of the cross in Matthew 16:22. Now Peter was letting Jesus lead him. And she opened her eyes, and when she saw Peter, she sat up. By all appearances, Tabitha was raised from the dead. She was dead and came back to life. We should remind ourselves that Dorcas was not resurrected, she was resuscitated to her old life where she would die again. Dorcas wasn't raised for her own sake. She would have enjoyed heaven better. She was raised for the sake of her ministry to others, which is the same reason we have passed from death to life. John 5:24. Peter stays with Simon, a tanner. This sentence would be somewhat shocking to an observant Jew of that time. According to their understanding of the law, it was strictly forbidden to associate with anyone who routinely worked with dead animals. According to the laws of that time, a tanner had to live at least 75 feet outside a village because of his constant ritual uncleanliness. The trade of a tanner was held in such supreme contempt that if a girl was betrothed to a tanner without knowing that he followed that calling, the betrothal was void. He stayed many days in Joppa with Simon, a tanner. Because of this, we see Peter was becoming less concerned about Jewish traditions and ceremonial notions than before. This work of God in Peter's heart laid ground for what God would do in Peter in the following chapter. And what stood out to me was that Jesus raised Talitha and Peter raised Tabitha. Very similar names. The fact that Tabitha was resuscitated, and that's the same for us. When we're born again, we are resuscitated, but we won't be resurrected until Jesus comes again and calls us to be with him. And although we don't die physically, we die of the flesh, and then we're baptized and born again. And that's what I've got from it, and I'll leave it there.